Do you like sports? Do you like art? What about science? Giraffes? Giraffe scientists that paint rugby games? It's all available on Audible, the biggest audiobook site with the largest selection of audiobooks this side of the inner solar system. No need to use your boring old eyes anymore. The ears are the future, my friend. Why, you're using them right now. So check out Audible and get your listen on. Go to www.readlearnlivepodcast.com/audible to start your 30-day free trial today.
They start a downward cycle when you give in to a moment of choice, whether you start procrastinating or you quit working on a habit or you don't focus. So being out ahead of the moments of choice can change everything.
Hello and welcome to Read, Learn, Live, the podcast about improving yourself through literature. I'm your acclaimed host, John Monaster, and I'd like to welcome you to episode 76, where we've got all the trombones. As always, if you have ideas for books you'd like to see featured or authors you want to put me in touch with, you can reach me at jon@readlearnlivepodcast.com. Today, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak with author Ellen Goodwin about her book, Done: How to Work When No One is Watching. Ellen Goodwin is a productivity trainer, TEDx speaker, and author who uses neuroscience-based principles to enable individuals and businesses to overcome procrastination, build stronger habits, and be more focused so that they can be more efficient and effective with their time. When it comes to productivity, Ellen believes there is no one-size-fits-all solution, so she advocates for experimentation to find the tools and techniques that work best with your life and your business. She recently released her book, Done: How to Work When No One is Watching, and is the co-host of the Faster, Easier, Better Show podcast. I hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Read, Learn, Live podcast. I'm your host, John Monaster. Very excited that you decided to join me today to listen in on this interview with Ellen Goodwin, author of Done: How to Work When No One is Watching. Ellen, say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah. This is going to be a great conversation. You sort of wrote like the ultimate productivity book, and I'm so interested. And this is Read, Learn, Live podcast about, what can we do to improve ourselves and grow within the books that we read. And this really directly targets that. So
Totally
very excited to chat. Totally targets it. Yeah. So how can we be more productive? So, all right. So I want to hear the elevator pitch here. So I always like to start off with, what is this book all about? If someone sees this book, what can they expect out of it?
They can expect to learn how to get things done. That's the clean version. How to, how to overcome procrastination, how to build better habits, be more focused so they can be more efficient and effective with their time. That's the short version.
Yeah. No, I think, and that's exactly it. I think you have example after example after example of how to do just that. And I think for me, at least, one of the things I enjoyed about the book was that you didn't just say, this is the way I did it, so follow me. You always had lots of different options and avenues and paths that people could take and, try this thing. And if that doesn't work, maybe try this one. And if that doesn't work, here's a third way of doing things. So I think recognizing that people are different and people learn differently and people grow habits and get things done differently is a big part of the book. And I really like the way that you kind of follow that through.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. There is just no one size fits all when it comes to getting things done. And there's so many books out there, and I'm not bashing these people at all, but there are so many that are like, here's my system and you do it this way, and then on day 2 you do this, and then you know what? Life gets in the way, and you may have all the best intentions, but if that just doesn't work in your life, you're not going to follow it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. And that in the end, that's what matters is, are you sticking to it?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Okay. Before we dive in and give away all of the brilliant secrets here.
Yes.
I always like to check in on the author and sort of their mindset here. because this is clearly something that you've done a lot of thought. You've had a lot of thought about. But how did you decide that this was book worthy? That you were like, okay, now I'm going to actually sit down and turn this into a book and share this with people. Why was that an important choice for you to make?
It became a choice because so many people were asking me what I was doing, and I sort of became known as the person that could help you get things done. And so people would come up to me, they'd just be talking about something. And they're like, yeah, I can't get this. And I'd be like, ooh, you got to try this, try this, try this. And so I got, you know what? You need to put that in a book. People need this. I need this. And then whenever I would say, I'm thinking of writing a book, and they're like, I need this book. So
Right.
I was like, I will write the book.
I like it. Just giving the people what they want.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay. What I just want to hear about your writing process. How did you then assemble the book, right? Because you have it structured in a very interesting and thoughtful way. And I'm guessing that, you had a lot of these ideas sort of scattered about, but you really brought them into a coherent whole here. And how did you go about kind of making that happen and actually putting pen to paper when it came to taking all these ideas that you were using and you were teaching people and turning them into a book?
Well, I'm going to tell you a deep, dark secret. I laid the whole book out, and I sat down one January morning and laid the whole book out. This is what it's going to be. And about 9 months later, I changed it all because I was like, this is how it should go. And then once I got into it, I realized that as you said, the thoughtful flow wasn't there, because I'd be talking about something and I'm like, I don't tell any, they don't even read this for 5 more chapters. So it was very much, I put it together, and then it was moving it all around to the point where it all fit together. And that's when the flow of where I talk about action, energy, and focus all kind of came together. I mean, it's something I've been speaking about, and why I didn't connect it when I put the book together, who knows? But but it was like figuring out the different parts of things that I work with people. So procrastination, that's like 5 chapters. And
that's a big one.
because there's so many different types of procrastination. And once I process, like, let's pull all of that into one big section and the other sections go, it started to make more sense. So I was just as confused writing it. And so I was confused that you didn't have to be reading it.
Well, very thoughtful.
Well, yeah, I thought it would be helpful. So, putting it together, I got it together, so you didn't have to put it all together.
Well, there you go. Thank you so much. Okay, so I wanna wind back the clock here, and you talk at the beginning of the book about your story a little bit. So you made this transition that is probably scary to a lot of people of moving into kind of a freelance position, becoming a freelance graphic designer. So what was your life like then? What were things like for you before, during, and then when you had fully transitioned?
So I was working for an advertising agency. I had full accountability. I had people watching over me all the time. I need this done. I need this done. And because of circumstances, there was a recession going on, things like that. They were cutting staff. And so I decided I would get out before the cutting started. And I left to start my own business. And all of a sudden I found myself with no accountability. I could just sit in my office and do nothing if I wanted to. And in the beginning, I didn't have a lot of clients. So there was that time where I kind of learned how to make one job that's supposed to take 1 hour, expand it to the point where it takes. So Parkinson's law, which I talk about in the book, which is when a task expands to fill the time available. And that happened to me all the time because I didn't have that accountability.
Yeah. I think we've all experienced that. So very important to note. So one of the things you start us off kind of early in the book laying the foundation by talking about some things that you really say will be important across the entire space of the book. And so you get into the idea of action versus motion, and you start talking about an action plan and that being kind of a defining thing here. So yeah, I think that was a really great point. So how do you think about action and motion differently? How are those two different things, and why is one probably better than the other?
Okay, action. Action. Well, let's start with motion, because I talk about this
Sure.
in the book. Motion is a hamster on a hamster wheel. They're rolling around, and they get nowhere. But they're in motion. They're definitely in motion. But in the end, they're no closer to whatever their desired outcome would be. But action is a little bit like football. You're moving down the field, maybe just inches at a time, maybe yards at a time, but you have a definite goal. And every time you do something, you're moving forward. So action is where things happen. Let's say I wanted to lose weight and get in shape. And so motion would be me getting on the internet and hunting down, what's the best exercise program, and let me put together a food program and getting all this stuff done. But in the end, I haven't eaten any better. I haven't moved a muscle. I've just been in motion. And action would be, okay, here's my menu for the day, and here's my list of exercises, and now I'm going to do them, and now I'm going to eat that. And so I'm in action because I'm actually moving myself down the field towards being healthier and in better shape. So action is the way to do things.
Right. And you definitely talk about how we can kind of have that illusion where we feel like we're getting things done, but because it's actually just motion, we're not actually making any headway towards our goal. And I think that was so insightful for me, because I am one of those people that likes to put together lists and to-do lists and other things, and to really research things in depth a lot. And I think that happens with a lot of people, where you get stuck in that, in that like a Wikipedia hole or whatever, when you're just like reading and reading and reading, and it's like, okay, well, wait, what do I actually need to get done here? So once you find yourself stuck there, how do you get unstuck? How do you actually start moving into action?
Well, so one of the things, it's not bad that you're doing all of that research and you're checking things out. You wouldn't decide to drive across the country without at least having a plan. Okay, I'm gonna drive this far today, and I'm gonna drive this. So researching things, great idea. The whole thing is you have to know when to stop. And one of my favorites is just to have a line in the sand. And so you plan that, okay, I'm going to research until noon today, and after noon, I'm all in action. And just knowing, you give yourself a deadline that this is what I can do. And after that, no more. I have to be in action. And I think that's one of the best ways to do it.
Yeah. And then you start talking about an action plan, and you reference this throughout the entire rest of the book. This is a favorite of yours. So tell us, tell us about the action plan and why this is such a good way to helping us achieve our goals.
They boil down to look at what you want to achieve, whatever it is, and then break it down into small bits so you're not going, holy crap, I can't do that. And then look ahead to what might get in your way and make a plan to overcome that. Because so many times we're working on something, we're in action, we're doing something, and we run into a roadblock, like, oh, okay, I'm done. So if you have a plan ahead of time, then you're not going to get stopped. You know what your little steps are, you're going to track yourself, and you're going to have your roadmap. You know where you're going.
Yeah. So what are some of the different types? So if you're going to start breaking down things into action plans, like is it that there are different tasks, different types of tasks you want to have action plans for? I mean, I remember reading in the book a little bit about, obviously if you're doing something huge, like if you're, writing a book, your action plan is going to be different than, I'm meal planning for groceries for the week or something like that.
Oh, yeah,
or I don't know, maybe they'll be similar. I don't know. So I'm just trying to think, like, how do you set those up? How do you scale them to be successful?
It's all basically You know what you want. What's the small steps? What can get in your way? How do you know when you've achieved it? One of the things we really don't go into in the book is definition of done. And knowing your definition of done is super important too, because you could just keep going and going. You know, I might write an article for Medium and it's done, but if I haven't defined it as, okay, I'm great with it, I might just keep going and going and like rewriting and rewriting. So basically, coming back to what you said, you know what you want, you know the small steps, you know what might get in your way, and you have your definition of done. And so, yeah, you can block it out in a full chart, especially like writing a book. You're talking about weeks and months. And so you might, instead of making an action plan that's, for the whole thing, you might make an action plan for 2 weeks at a time. I'm going to write 1,000 words and I'm going to do 1 hour of editing or 1 hour book, whatever. You're going to put it down and break it down. But if it's going to be something like cleaning the house, then that's a short little one. Use a Post-it note. You can do it just as simple as I'm going to clean in this order. And then if I get distracted, which would be your obstacle, this is what I would do. So you can have just a short little action plan. You don't have to have massive ones, but just keeping that in mind no matter when you start something that you want to achieve. And it, like you said, doesn't have to be big. It can cleaning the house. Just put a small one together, but know what you want to do, how you're going to do it, what you're going to do when you run into an obstacle, and then when you're done.
So let's turn to probably the biggest focus of the book, which is procrastination. So for those of us that are not even able to get into motion, that are that are stuck somewhere before that, stuck at the gates of either of those, you have multiple chapters on this, and I think it is a core issue that people have here. So, what are some of your favorite solutions for solving procrastination?
Well, first you have to look at one of the reasons we procrastinate, and that is because we give into moments of choice. And moments of choice are those moments where sometimes where you finish one thing and you're going to start something else, and there's this gap. And the gap in time could be 5 seconds. And during that time, your brain makes the decision, do I go on to the next thing, or do I do what feels comfortable? Because your brain loves comfort. And that could be, you've had a notification on your phone and you pick the phone up. You don't just check notification. You start scrolling through stuff. You go over to an app. You do something that you shouldn't do. So eliminating any moments of choice is one of the best ways that you can overcome procrastination. So that means, sometimes being smarter than yourself, turning off notifications, hiding your phone, blocking your computer, making sure people can't interrupt you, especially if you're working at home or you're in the office and people keep coming in. Just knowing how to stop your moments of choice. Great way to eliminate procrastination. Other things, you just set a timer. Set a timer for 5 minutes and get started. And because of a thing known as the Zeigarnik effect, you are probably going to keep going. So you set a timer for 5 minutes and you start doing whatever it is you're supposed to do. Clean the living room, exercise, whatever. At the end of 5 minutes, when your timer goes off, and I'm a big fan of kitchen timers because anytime you touch your phone, that becomes a moment of choice if you're setting a timer on. So the timer goes off, and chances are your brain will have gotten engaged and you'll keep going. So just setting the timer so you can hear it ticking, so you know the timer's going. Great way to get started. Another way is just don't worry about perfection. Just pick a place and start. Cleaning the house like we were talking about. Don't worry about the perfect place. Just, start picking up right where you stand. If there's a pile of magazines, okay, what did you plan to do with those? Start there and move around. And plan your day the night before so that in the morning when you come into your computer, you come into your office, right there's already a to-do list. So you don't have that moment of choice where you start, I should make a list. Oh no, you know what? I'm going to check email. No, I'm going to do this. So you plan the night before. And then one that I love is when you have a lot of things on your to-do list or that you need to take care of, and they all kind of have the same amount of excitement or priority or value to you, and it's difficult to decide what you're going to do, you could spend a lot of time procrastinating, sorting them out, deciding, just number them all, take one dice, two dice, depending on how many you have, roll the dice, whatever number comes up, that's the job you do, finish that, cross it off, roll the dice again. So you take the whole decision process out of your head, put it in the dice, and get started.
Yeah, I think that one was a favorite of mine. I think that's the theme I really got from a lot of your tips is that, don't force yourself to waste your valuable brain time on those types of choices. Give your brain, outsource all of that to the dice or to having written it the night before or whatever else, so that stuff is on autopilot and you can actually focus on getting the important stuff done, having those deep thoughts. So that made a lot of sense. I also I use self-control, and you mentioned that a couple times in the book. I like that one a lot. It's so, so for those of you listening that haven't tried it, it's this app on a Mac, and you put in all the websites that you waste time with generally or otherwise want to not be able to access in your moment of choice. My list is quite long. And then you start it, give it a time, and you put in your password, and then you cannot access those sites during that time. Like there's no way to undo it, basically. Even if you restart or whatever, you're stuck. It edits your file on your computer. So what's so crazy about that, though, is that, I did this more at the beginning, but I do it still, I'll admit, a little bit now, which is sometimes I'll pause working, and just have one of those lapses where I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go do something else for a sec. I've just been working for a while. And I'll go and type in, NewYorkTimes.com or something, and then it'll show up as blocked. And I'm like, oh, right. I just set that to block 20 minutes ago. And I can't, but it's like there's two different parts of your brain kind of fighting literally. And it really shows when one part of me does something, just not knowing that I already blocked that from happening moments ago.
Exactly. It's, your limbic system is fighting your prefrontal cortex. And your limbic system is the part of your brain that wants the easy stuff, that wants to just be, comfortable and relaxed. And that comes in with distractions because it takes you away from the hard stuff. If you're working on hard stuff, your prefrontal cortex wants you to do that. But your limbic system, it's like, oh, that's the one that goes, hey, we should check Facebook. What's on Instagram? So and being smarter than yourself, that's your prefrontal cortex blocking, installing self-control and making it work. And when you have that moment, like you just said, where your limbic system becomes in charge, it goes, yeah, let's check the New York Times. And it's like, nope, I'm ahead of you.
One of your other tips that I liked generally across the book was to turn your phone into black and white mode or monochrome mode or whatever. So actually, I hadn't really thought of that, and I tried that, and it's actually pretty good as a trick because it really makes your phone less interesting. It's hard to describe, but it's just it's not as cool or fun because there's not pretty colors at you, coming at you all the time.
Yeah, it's like your phone is like candy. To your limbic system, it's candy, and then black and white's like, yeah. So and it's super easy to do on your phone. It's on a Mac, on an iPhone, it's really easy. Android's a little more involved, but once you do it, it's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have an Android. I figured it out. It took a little bit of time, but I figured it out. And it's interesting. I had it for 4 days straight until someone was sending me photos and stuff that I actually wanted to see in colors. I'm like, fine, I'll give in. But I lasted a while, I think, with it on. I was just intending to do it for a night, but yeah, it's a good trick in general. Another one I did was I used to have it where a thumbprint or a face thing would unlock the phone, and I changed it into a really long, an 8-digit number code or something.
Nice.
So it's a little I could very easily get access before. It would just take less than a second, and then my phone's unlocked and I could start using it. Now it takes a little bit more time. And I think that's another theme I caught throughout, trying to keep, and that's something else I kind of wanted to transition into is like, is not okay. So we've gotten through procrastinating, we've gotten into getting things done, but now we're hitting distractions, right? And that's sort of, it's like, okay, we finally got ourselves into a good place, but we're not robots. We will eventually get distracted, like you said, by the limbic system. And so I think some of the stuff you talk about is about just making things a little bit more difficult sometimes can actually help. And I think that was that trick that I had thought through there, where just making it a little bit more difficult to check my phone for messages, or sometimes putting it away. You mentioned putting it out of sight, even as being very helpful, which I thought was interesting.
Oh yeah, and make it difficult to get to. Maybe like I said, put it in a drawer, put it in the other room. Studies have found that we don't perform as well if we can see our phone. Our attention is always going to be distracted because the phone is there, whether it's on or off. So distractions, yes, make them 20% harder to do. And that's going to help. And like you said, you changed your passcode. I've done that. It used to be that I had no passcode on. I could just pick my phone up. Now, definitely have to put one in. And it does make me think each time. Oh yeah, it's a little bit of a pause where I have to think. I've also, I shut down apps on my phone and my computer so that I have to remember what the password is. And then half the time I don't, and I have to wait till they send me a new one. And it slows me down. But the other thing that I love to do with distractions is I like to schedule them. And that would be, for distractions, I call them distractions of choice. The ones that you choose to do, that is going to the New York Times. It's checking out a favorite app, something like that is a distraction that is going to happen. And so I schedule them. And basically for me, I'll do the last 5 minutes of an hour. And I have an alarm go off, and I know at that 5 minutes I can go get distracted. But then another alarm goes off at the top of the hour, and I have to go back to work. The other thing I can do when I do that is I make it awkward to do that distraction. I'm not just sitting back in my chair and like looking at stuff on the internet. I have to get up and walk around. One of my things is I like to read the news. And so I can only read it on my iPad while I'm walking around my living room. And that makes it, it's not comfortable. It's a little awkward. I'm not going to get very comfortable doing it, so I'm not going to do it for hours. But if I was slouched on the couch reading, an hour can go by and you're like, whoa, I just gave into a lot of distraction.
One of the other things then is about accountability, is keeping yourself on track consistently. And you talk a lot about some of the different tricks that are out there for, accountability and starting to track that. And a lot of what you talked about was, like, for example, exercise. You use that as an example a lot, and having a class that you can go to and have people there that you build a community around, and then your presence will be missed if you don't show up, and all that. And so, I think a lot of those accountability suggestions were good ones, but very much dependent on people, which right now, is a little difficult. There's no group gym classes really that we can do. So I thought I'd just check in on, what are some good accountability tricks when you're maybe you are used to working from home, but a lot of people may be working from home for the first time, or otherwise, even though they're in an office job, they no longer have the boss kind of wandering by and checking in on them. So it might be kind of a new world where they really have to hold themselves accountable in a new way. So what are some ways we can do that given where we're at?
Get a virtual accountability partner. So for years I had an accountability partner who was in New York, and I'm in Southern California. So, we never saw each other in person, but we would talk every morning, and we would talk about what we wanted to get done that day, what we might encounter as obstacles, of course, and what we accomplished the day before. And just knowing I had that phone call every day made it really hard to, get lost in distractions and then have to report the next day. Yeah, remember I was going to have those 2 chapters done, and I spent 3 hours playing a game. So just knowing I had someone to tell that this is what I got done or didn't get done helped a lot. Right now,
Mm-hmm.
I work with a woman in my mastermind, and every day we just snap a picture of our to-do list to each other and say, here's what I got done, here's what I didn't get done. I have clients that will just text me in the morning, this is what I'm going to get done, and then at the end of the day, they text me. Now, for people that you have like more, let's say, important things you need to get done. You know what? I need to get an article done today, and it's a beautiful day outside, and it'd be really easy to get distracted. So
Mm-hmm.
I might text my accountability partner and say, hey, I need 4 o'clock, check in with me at 4 and see if I got this done. Or I'll let you know when I get it done, and it has to be before 4. You can even use social media. Again, huge moment of choice, but so, put it on social media, maybe in a group you belong to. Like I said, I've got a mastermind where I can say, hey, this has to be done. I'll check in, or you check in on me. And if it's a really big project, I'll report every hour how I'm doing, or have someone, check in on me. So there's a lot of ways, and a lot of it relies on technology, but we can bring people closer to us without having to be right next to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think a lot of what the book talks about is how we can sort of bend technology to our will, or make it work for us instead of
right.
make it distract us, which is what sort of the rest of the world wants it to do, right? Because then we look at more of their ads and whatever else. So yeah, it's about kind of fighting back to some degree, and I like that idea. One word that sort of seemingly permeates all this is willpower, right? So a lot of, in my mind, a lot of this is about willpower. What is, I think about willpower. We can, there's a lot of science behind what willpower is, and you kind of talk about it a little bit, and how there's even maybe a little bit of a back and forth behind the idea of it. But it seems kind of fundamental to me in terms of how we're able to actually, do all these things. Anyone, we can all set timers and do all this, but really forcing ourselves to stay on it, I think, starts to get into how can we flex that muscle to some degree and build that. And so, how is willpower connected through all this, and what can we learn from science here?
Okay, so willpower, going back to what you were talking about, where you block yourself on self-control, that takes some willpower. That's the present self preventing the future self from doing something that they're not going to do. I talk about in the book this study that was done involving chocolate chip cookies and radishes, and determining whether people use up their self-control, whether they could do as much, they had as much willpower. And the test, the study involved taking students, and they were in different rooms, and in the room there would be, a bowl of chocolate chip cookies, and group A could eat chocolate chip cookies, and there was also a bowl of radishes, and they could eat those too, but nobody would while they were waiting. And then like the second group was brought into similar rooms, and there's the bowl of chocolate chip cookies and the bowl of radishes, and they were told they could only have radishes. And after that, they all went and were supposed to solve a puzzle. It was anagrams, and it turns out they were unsolvable, but they didn't know that. And the study was like, how long did someone work on the test for the anagram until they just gave up? And they found that the students that had to resist eating chocolate chip cookies had less self-control. And for years that stood as an example of when you run out of self-control, you no longer have the willpower, you can't get things done. When they tried to replicate those same results, they found that they couldn't. And so that's where science has gone back and forth. Is it true? Is it not true? But honestly, how many of us have done something where you had to exercise self-control for a long time? Maybe sat at the dinner table with a relative who was spouting off things that you just couldn't believe, but you had to bite your tongue, and because your mother's there, and she would get angry, and you get done with that dinner, and you are just, you can't think, you've used up all your self-control trying not to do what you're not supposed to do, and you have no power to do the right thing next, to make good decisions. Yeah. Or you sit through meetings in the morning, and at the end of the meetings, I'm going to have a healthy lunch, and you go out and you're like, burger and fries, because I've got no self. So whether science says it works or not, they can do the study, fine, but we all run into self-control issues, and when we have used up self-control, our ability to utilize good willpower, gone.
Yeah, I think that's a good takeaway, in the end. And again, like we were talking about at the beginning, the what we're talking through now is very much just a flavor and some examples. But as you read through the book and you get those systematic options, as everyone will run into these things differently, then you can figure out which of the solutions works best for you to overcome that specific problem in that specific instance. So
yeah, I mean, it's like, I'll just pop in real quick. Like, if you're buying a new car, they'll, here you've got this option and this option and this option, and they know this. Dealers know this, and so by the end, they're bringing up the really expensive stuff, and you have no willpower because you've already picked. What color seats do you want? Do you want the windows tinted? Do you want all the little stuff? And then they bring up let's do the $3,000 undercoating or the warranty, and you're like, I got nothing left, and you just, you sign. Yeah.
Very sneaky, those dealers. So I want to talk chronotypes, which is right.
I would say chronotypes. So
chronotypes. That sounds right. Okay.
Potato.
Potato. Yeah, chronotypes. You talk about this, and it's interesting. And I definitely identify as a night owl. I am up late. My mom is always up late. We are just an up late kind of family, and I thought that discussion was really interesting. It's sort of, you were basically talking about how it's important to pay attention to that, and try to the extent that you can schedule your time around that, and figure out what type you are and when you're at your most productive, and then do the best you can so that you're working that, which I thought was a great idea. So how can we best make that happen? How do we identify when we're most productive, and how do we schedule around that?
There's basically 3 different chronotypes. You've got your early birds, you've got your third birds, which are the birds between early birds and late owls. So you've got, everyone's heard of the early birds and late owls, and then it's been found that there's a third one called the third birds, and they're not really early birds, they're not really night owls, but they're in between. So everybody has a different energy pattern, and no pattern is better than the other. It's just a thing.
Yeah.
To find out what you are, you probably have a good idea. I know I get up early. I'm up at 5:30. I'm 5:30, but then I'm in bed by 9. And you're probably just getting going about 9 o'clock. You're like, yeah. So what you can do is you just take a note card, just a simple index card or piece of paper, and for 3 days, track your energy levels. And it can be as simple as setting an alarm on your phone for every hour that you're awake. So I might start mine at 6, and from 6, 7 to, and each time that goes off, I write down what my energy level is from a 10 to a 1. And 10 would be, I'm ready to take on the world, and 1 would be ready to go to sleep. And you just simply write it down and do that for 3 days, and then kind of look, and you're going to have a pattern. You're going to, this is not super scientific. If you want to make it even better, do it for 10 days. But I think 3 days gives you a good idea. You're not going to have this magic thing where, one day I have no energy and the next day I'm crazy at that time. You're going to have a pattern. And once you know your pattern, because I know 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there's no writing, there's no creativity. That's when I might do research or things that don't require me to do a lot of things. Schedule some of, if I leverage that time, I can get twice as much writing done. Once I know that, I don't schedule meetings for the morning because they take away from my creative time. I'll schedule them for the afternoon. So you start leveraging where you know you're the most productive. You've got the best energy for the task. And again, as much as you can do that, depending on what your job is. And if you're a night owl, it's harder to do if you're doing a quote unquote regular job in an office.
Yeah.
So you just look at your time and schedule as best you can for the things that work best with your energy level.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think, and I agree. It is tricky if you're in an office setting. Most people have to work kind of the same hours, but even still, I try. Like to your point, I always try, and so I have sort of a an office day job, but I try and schedule things. Just like I have to do meetings whenever they are, and that's whatever. That's the way it is. But I try and schedule like the deep thought times or times when I need to write something important. Probably later in the afternoon because I feel like I've sort of revved up a little bit and I'm really, I'm more thoughtful at that point and able to focus and get things done and all that than right when I wake up when I'm still in that kind of groggy, what is this morning thing mode. So yeah, makes sense. Okay. So yeah, you turn towards focus at the end of the book. What do you think of when you hear the word focus and how can we focus better?
When I think of focus, I think of keeping your brain in one room. And that's basically what focus is. If you imagine that your brain is a house and you can only do certain things in certain rooms, that's going to help you focus. So imagine that you're sitting at your computer and you're reading email and a phone call comes in and you take the phone call, but you're still reading. And after a while, you really have no idea what you're reading or what you're listening to or talking about. So if your brain was a house, you could listen in the living room and you could read in the bedroom. And each time you wanted to do that thing, you had to go to that specific room. And each time you go from room to room, you use up a little energy, you use up a little time. And that is basically multitasking. So the idea behind focus is keep your brain in one room. So that means, you're just going to read, you're just going to write, you're just going to research, you're just going to do one specific thing. So focus means you keep your brain in one room and you don't have to do it for a long time. That's the thing. A lot of people think, oh my God, I have to focus for hours. You don't. If you can set a timer, so I'll bring the timers back in, set a timer and just decide, I'm going to focus for 10 minutes and this is what I'm going to do. And it's a specific thing that keeps your brain in one room. That's going to work. And if you do a focus session, let's say, you work up to the point where, hey, I'm going to work for 25 minutes. It's going to be a focus session. I'm going to set a timer. And before you do that, write down what you're going to get done, what you're going to work on during that focus session. So you keep your brain in the one room. And also write down a couple other things that you could do, because if you're in this focus session and your brain is, you're just dialed in and you're focusing and you finish your first task, rather than have a moment of choice where you go, what should I do next? You just look at your piece of paper and you jump into your next thing. You don't waste time. You don't waste that focus. So keep your brain in one room.
Right. I like that. That makes a lot of sense. And I think we've all been guilty of that, where we will accidentally start multitasking without even realizing it. And then you're sort of like, wait, I have no idea actually what's been going on. Like it's very bizarre because for the beginning of it, you feel as if you're successful. Like it's this trick that your brain plays on you where you're reading something and you're listening and you're like, okay, everything's going great. And then 30 seconds in, you're like, wait, I don't have any idea what I just read or what this person is talking about.
Right.
Oh boy. So it's an important habit to get yourself out of, I think.
Exactly.
And I like, there's all these different techniques and, I had heard of the Pomodoro one before and you talk about that, but it's all variations on that. But like you mentioned, across the book, there's, try a lot of different things. Don't
Yeah.
don't try one and give up and be done. See what works for you. Find something that will allow you to be productive. And kind of one thing within all of that, which I was surprised to see mentioned, was meditation, because I've dabbled in meditation. Probably a lot of people have dabbled, here or there. But you actually talk through it and mention it as an important idea within the rest of all the things that you can do. Whereas I think probably everything else in the book up to that point was very much like, here are systems and elements, and this is sort of like a little bit different. So how did you come up on the idea of including meditation, and how do you think that can help with focus here?
Well, like a lot of things in the book, me as the guinea pig, just noticing that when I took the time to meditate for 10 minutes every day, I would have a much more productive day. My brain worked for me instead of against me. And so I started researching it and really understanding all the things that they found, that when you meditate, the different things that it really can improve, and focus is one of them. And I just find that the whole idea of sitting quietly. I'm not the meditator that I'm not the meditator that's great about doing it every day, and I'm not the one that
Yeah.
I don't have the puffy cushion in the meditation room or any. I will plop down on the couch and just close my eyes and just watch my breathing. And it's more than anything, especially as things are crazy in the world, it's just the quieting down. It's
Hmm.
it's getting off the freeway and getting into a side road and just slowing everything down so that the parts can work like they need to. And again, for like a 10-minute productivity thing, the rewards are crazy. So
Mm.
meditation, it was started with me. And then when I looked into it, because I thought, was it just me? Nope. All the science shows that just slowing down increases focus going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a good one to try, and it's one of those ones that I dabble on, but I haven't quite made a habit yet. And you talk about in the book that making habits takes a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and I not so recently, but relatively in my life, was able to recently conquer flossing every day as a habit. So that's there now.
That's a
So that was
great one.
that was a that was a pretty good one. I
Did
was
you start?
happy about
Did you
that one.
start with the 1-2 thing?
No,
Oh,
no, no, no.
okay.
I think, well, what did I do to do that? I think I just left the floss out.
Oh,
I think that was my trick. So whenever I was in the bathroom at night, I just saw it.
right.
So I think for whatever it is, like, having it kind of buried behind a mirror or something, it was just like
Yeah.
one more step. And I think you mentioned that too, where I think you had your point, like if you're, trying to get to the gym, like put all your clothes out next to your bed.
Yeah.
So they're like, you step on them and they're right there, or whatever it is. So
Exactly. Yeah. You want to
anyway,
make the
but
hard
so
easy and the easy hard.
yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. And I like the point you raised about kind of having the mini, like the just breaking things down further and further. And I think one of your ideas was just to kind of take the littlest step possible and start on that. So I think for me, with
absolutely.
meditation, I have this app Calm, that's one of the meditation app things, and so I'm just trying to get into the habit of like opening it every day at least, and just kind of
Hmm.
like, okay, I'm gonna every day I'll open the app at least, and I'll get closer and closer to actually hitting start and sending down, and building
That's
that
perfect.
in. So
That's
yeah,
perfect. That's basically a micro mini habit. You're
right,
just starting out, and that's the way you're going to build a habit.
yeah,
Congratulations.
that's my goal. Thanks. Gotta start somewhere. And then we kind of wrap up with goals. And I liked and was surprised by your framing of them. And one of the things there is you use this sort of process of elimination
Hmm.
to get to figuring out what the goals actually are. It's kind of it's an interesting thought, but a lot of times we can work without actually having the clear goal. And you mentioned earlier about it's important to define what done looks like,
Hmm.
but also even knowing what is it you're trying to achieve at a higher level. And so, what's your process of elimination, and more broadly, how do you think about goals?
Oh, okay. So process of just I take a piece of paper, like 8.5 by 11, fold it in half. On the left side, I write down what I don't want, and on the right side, I write what I want. And that you kind of look at your life, and I don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck. So what do you want? I want a job that consistently pays me what I'm worth. Okay. And you just do this list of what you don't want and then what you do want and what that looks like. And then go through the list and find what is the overarching one you need at that point in time. And that becomes your one thing. And you don't have
Hmm.
to do this list. You don't have to sit down and do it in 5 minutes. It can be something that you write at night, every night for a week, or you look at it in the morning when you're having coffee. But you come up with this idea of what you don't want, what's not there, and you understand what is either the opposite of it or what will make you happier, and that's what you want. So that's your goal. And one of the things I talk about with goals is where everyone tells us, oh, set smart goals, set smart goals. Well,
Yeah.
I have a problem with smart goals because depending
Yeah.
on what framework you read, the A and the R are supposed to be achievable and realistic. And
Well, so what's the whole acronym for
oh,
those of
it's
us that
uh,
don't know? Because it's not just for the phrase SMART goals
it's
we were
not
talking about
no,
there,
it's
listeners at home.
it's supposed to
The
be,
term SMART has a special
yes,
meaning.
specific, measurable, and again, achievable, realistic, and time based.
Okay, that was a good. You passed the test, Joe.
Yes, yay. um, but I have a problem with the whole achievable and realistic because,
Hmm.
first of all, they're kind of the same thing. But if I look at a goal and I say, is it achievable? Well, it's super easy for me to go, I don't know. I don't think so. So I'm not going to try it. And is it
Yeah.
realistic? Is it realistic for me to say, I want to be an Olympic ski jumper? Well, you know what? Probably not, but I might become a really good ski jumper. And, if you don't shoot for very high, you're not going to go very high. So
Mm.
I think if you take achievable out and realistic out, and put in action plan, because I do love a good action plan, and
Yeah.
a reaction plan. And a
Mm.
reaction plan is basically an if then plan. So if this happens, then this is what I do. And
Hmm.
if then plans, uh, you've read the book, you see it, they're everywhere in the book
Yeah.
because they are the most wonderful thing for overcoming obstacles. Because you take the time ahead of time to think about what might go wrong so you can plan what you're going to do so you don't get stopped. If this happens, then I do this. So with your goals, you look ahead, and if this stops me, then I'm going to go around it by doing this so that you
Hmm.
you don't give up, because we talked about this. We give up when we run into obstacles. So instead of making a goal achievable or realistic, make an action plan and a reaction plan.
There it is. I like it. Okay. Well, before we close things out, are there any other ideas or anything else big that you want people to take away from this, or that you want people to know that we didn't have a chance to get into?
You know, we covered the book pretty well. Thank you for
Yeah.
reading it. I'm always impressed that you make it through the books and you read the books. So I think we covered it really well. That the biggest takeaway that permeates everything is the moments of choice, uh,
Hmm.
and being ahead of them, because they start a downward cycle when you give in to a moment of choice, whether you start procrastinating or you quit working on a habit or you don't focus. So being out ahead of the moments of choice can change everything.
Yeah. I like it. All right. Let's do a quick thunder round and call it a day. Sound
Okay.
good?
Yeah. Thunder
All
roll.
right. What is your favorite food and or drink?
Oh, I am a huge beer snob.
Nice.
So beer.
Okay, that's fair. And you're in Southern California, next to lots of breweries. Do you have a favorite?
Oh my gosh. They end up
or a current favorite?
changing a lot. We're drinking a lot of Pizza Port beer right now.
Ooh,
Just, it's kind of the house beer.
okay, okay. I like that. That sounds nice. Where's your favorite place you've ever been?
Well, this will come as no surprise. Belgium. Went
Aha!
there a couple years ago on a beer tour, and
Wow.
it was amazing. The countryside is gorgeous. The food, the
You hang out with
people.
some monks?
Sorry. Oh, did I hang out with? Actually, we did go to two monasteries because they make really good beer.
Yeah, yeah. Turns out for a while. Yeah, I like Lef, which I guess was bought by some huge multinational. I
Oh,
don't know if
right.
they still make it there anymore, but anyway, um, yeah, there are lots of good beers there. All right, last question. If you could wave a magic wand and change any one thing, what would it be and why?
Oh my goodness. Right now, I just have to go. If I could wave a big wand and we could just have, I know it's cliche, but peace. Peace on earth.
Yeah,
Everybody,
peace on earth.
can we just all get along? So that would
That
be my big
is,
wave.
is perfectly acceptable. That is a perfectly acceptable use of the wand. All right. Well, this has been a really great conversation. I think everyone listening is going to take away some really actionable steps that they can use. But I think more importantly, this even though this was an amazing conversation with so much, this is still the tipping, the edge, the tip of the iceberg of the book. There are so many more tips in there. So, Ellen, where can people get the book, and how can people get in touch with you if they want to use your services?
Oh, okay. The book is on Amazon. You can get the paperback or the ebook is out there. And you can find out more about me at ellengoodwin.com or just hit me up at ellen@ellengoodwin.com.
There it is, easy enough. So go find more tips, figure out how to excel at getting things done. Ellen Goodwin, thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Read, Learn, Live. If you liked it, tell a friend and subscribe on iTunes and Google Play. If you hated it, tell a friend and subscribe on iTunes and Google Play. And so it goes.